I'm sure you all remember this from Castaway. Have you ever felt that way about sports equipment before? It's an odd thing, right? Why in the world is she crying over a volleyball? If you've seen the movie, it's just a volleyball with a little face on it, made by the Wilson Company, which is where the name of the volleyball gets its name. And you know, the reason that his character in that movie is doing that is because of this primal thing that all of us have, which is that we're supposed to be in community. We're supposed to be in community. We're not supposed to be by ourselves. And when the character, Tom Hanks' character, finds himself on the island all by himself, it's just a natural progression that he's going to have a volleyball best friend named Wilson, which is why he risked his life to swim out in the ocean, why he even brought him on the raft as he tried to escape to begin with. Jesus knew this fundamental fact about humanity, that we're supposed to be in community, which is why the first thing Jesus does when he starts his ministry is he creates a small group. His small group consists of 12 people of all different walks of life, and I don't recommend that your small groups have 12 people in them. I think that's too much. You know, sometimes you can do that if you know what you're doing. And his small group, for what it's worth, didn't even have a place to meet. They went from this place to that place. They were here, they were there, they were on grassy knolls everywhere. And I do recommend that, by the way, if you find yourself in a small group. You don't have to meet in your homes or somebody else's home. If you want to meet in a Panera, or you want to get the kids together and go to a park and let them have at it while you all study the Bible, that's fine. I'll warn you, though, I had a Bible study a couple years ago in Panera, and we prayed like you're supposed to do when you're in a Bible study, and we just kept getting this parade of people coming by thanking us for praying in public and asking us who we were and what we were doing there. Because, you know, the reality is so often that we have this faith and we're really scared to show it, and when somebody's bold enough to take their small group and put it out in public, we react to that. We have this understanding, wow, there's something that I really like about what they're doing. I wish I could be a part of that. I wish I could do it. And I spent just as much time talking to people walking by about what we were doing as we actually did in the event itself. And this concept that we're supposed to be in community is not my idea. It's not Hollywood's idea. It's the way God intended it to be, which is why our worship looks the way that it does. We meet every Sunday in this big house, and then we're supposed to meet some other time in small little group fellowships. This is how it's supposed to be. This is Acts. You understand the book of Acts, this is how the very first Christians acted, the Acts of the Apostles. Chapter 5. As they left the council, that's all the disciples, they rejoiced that they were considered worthy to suffer dishonor for the sake of his name. Now that's a whole other sermon right there, how it could be enjoyable to suffer and then say, hey, isn't that great? Wasn't that awesome? That's not where we're going today. This is where we're going. And every day in the temple they met. And at homes they did not cease to teach and proclaim Jesus as the Messiah. So they met every day in the temple, in the big house, and then they met in each other's homes to proclaim Jesus the Messiah. That pattern that we're supposed to have large group worship, which is what we're doing here, and then small group fellowship, it starts with hosts. People want to be a part of Jesus' plan. People want to seek out what Jesus is doing in their life. People are willing to step out of the boat, which is what we read today, our Bible verse today. Because you know what? It's scary to step out of the boat. Did you notice? You probably didn't notice. Peter stepped out of the boat. I'm sure you saw that. Did you notice the other 11? Scared witless, hiding in the bottom of a boat. You know why he didn't notice them? Not important. We were so focused on what Peter was doing, but I want to take a second and look at what the disciples, the other 11 disciples, were doing, which was not doing anything. And what did they get for it? Nothing. They were afraid. They were crying out. They didn't see God's work. They didn't get to experience his miracles. They weren't a part of what he was doing in the world. They just sat on the bottom of the boat. My bet is they even told Peter not to go out. And they certainly didn't listen to what Jesus was saying. Jesus literally said, verse 27, "Take heart, don't be afraid." I love the disciples. They're just so human. They're so much like us. Jesus said, "Hey, don't do this." And they did the exact opposite of what he told them to do, which is to be afraid and hide in the bottom of the boat. Peter, I don't think is so profound. I have this understanding when I read the Bible. Peter is your best friend who never thought a thing through in his life. And he saw Jesus, and he went, "Hey, buddy!" and just stepped out of the boat. Jesus said, "Come." And Peter said, "Cool, man." And he did. He stepped right on outside of the boat. And all of us focus on that phrase that's repeated so often, "Ye of little faith." You know, we even go to the King James Version. Why do you have little faith, says Jesus when Peter's sinking. Ye of little faith. But you know what? I want to point out to you, he was the one that had faith. Okay, it was little. All right, it was little. But you know what? That's all he needed to walk on water. A little bit of faith was all he needed to experience miracles. Peter might have only had a little faith, but he wasn't feeling, he wasn't thinking, he just followed that faith. The problem was actually when he started feeling and thinking. When he got out on the water and the winds were there, and he started feeling, this is not safe. And he started thinking, how am I walking on water? And he started realizing, this is a dangerous situation. These waves are coming up. And he got lost in his head. And in his head, he said, who are you, Peter, that you can walk on water? Who do you think you are that the waves obey you? You can't do this. The thing that you're doing right now is not okay. You can't be here. You shouldn't be doing that. And the voices in his head were louder than the hand that grabbed him. You know, Peter was going down. He had faith. He walked out with faith. And he drowned without it. Or at least he would have. Except Jesus was there to catch him. Caught him in the water. We have the same choice. Peter's choice is our choice. We can either follow our feelings, what we feel is good, acceptable, right? What we feel we want to do right now, or what we feel is the thing, or we can follow by faith. Just a little bit of faith helped Peter walk on water. Just a little bit of faith, the faith of a mustard seed, can help you be a part of the kingdom of heaven. Just a little bit of faith can move mountains, Jesus tells us. Or you can, do whatever you feel. The problem is if you feel it, you won't do it. If you wait till you feel it, it won't happen. The 11 disciples, they weren't feeling it. They stayed in the bottom of that boat. They didn't experience Christ, and they didn't grow spiritually. Peter, he was afraid. He was just afraid as all the other disciples. We can tell because he ended up going down in the water. But nonetheless, he didn't go with his feelings. He went with his faith, and he got to go out on the water. And he got to meet Jesus, who grabbed him, who pulled him up, who walked him back to the boat, calmed the waves, and everything was great. By faith, Peter walked. Look, if you wait for your faith to be the thing that motivates you, you're never going to do anything great. If all of those boys in World War II on Omaha Beach waited till they felt like charging those beaches, you know what would have happened? The French would be speaking German. If the farmer waited for the days to be nice and the sun to be up and waited till he felt like getting out in the field, you know what would happen? We would all starve. If you wait till you feel like changing your baby's diaper, sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do. You got to put yourself out there. In previous weeks, I've taught about how small groups is a model of ancient ministry. This is how Christianity has been since the beginning, that we have decided, God has decided this is how we're going to act, this is how we're going to do. And I've encouraged you to sow seeds in good soil and watch God work miracles in your life. that you might reap from those seeds, that you might have from those things, not just what you put in, but 30 or 60 or 100 times what you put in. God wants to bless you. He wants you to sow with the Holy Spirit that you might get His blessings out of it. He wants you to sow in faith that you might reap in faith. You've heard me preach about how God can use our imperfections. In the same way that we can take pork rinds and we can take that pig skin and make something edible out of it, God can take all of our weaknesses, all of our shortcomings, all of the things that we want to hide and that we don't want to share, and He can make something amazing happen in those moments as well. I've warned you about the weeds. Parables after parables after parables, Jesus talks about the weeds and what happens to the weeds and how the weeds are our life and all the things that we put into them and how they can choke us out. And as pastor, it's my job to lead you down the right path. No, there's one path. It leads to the cross. There's only one road that leads to the cross. It's that crossroad, which now that I hear it would be a great name for a church. Crossroad. We should look into that. That's the one that has salvation. There's lots of other roads, a myriad of other roads. An infinite number of decisions that you can make, of things that you can put into your life, of things that you can follow, of ways that you can be, many of them good, some of them bad. Only one of them is salvation. Next week, we're going to open up all of those groups, all of those people who have stepped out of the boat to be hosts. We're going to open up all of those opportunities for you to join those groups so that you can get in the campaign, so you can learn what God has to teach you about how we are to live our lives. I don't want you to wait till next week. I want you to open up your life now. I want you to take the blue little flyer you got. I want you to fill it out. And I want you to think about, do I feel like doing this? Is this something I feel like doing? Do I feel like really opening my home to 6 other people? I don't want you to look at your belly button and wonder what's going on, because if you look at yourself, all you're going to find is your belly button and maybe some lint. I want you to look for God, who's not in your belly button. I want you to live by faith, not by feelings. See, the thing about faith is, it's one of those things that you have to look back on. If you think about how you're going in faith, you might get afraid, you might be fearful, you might recognize that that's not the path that you like to go, that you want to go, that you maybe even think you should go. But what happens with faith is when you look back at the way that you walked in faith, then you get to see God's hand in your life. And you can say, wow, well, there's that thing, I'm so glad I did it. If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have seen God. I wouldn't have met that person. Wouldn't have had those friendships. I don't know that I could have made it through that time. I'm so glad I was able to be there for somebody else as they were going through their time. You can tell God that your life is too full. Tell Him. Tell Him you don't want to join a small group. Tell God that you don't want to open your home to a small group. Tell Him, just be honest. Confess. That's okay. It's not the best way, but you can confess. We should, as a matter of fact, confess. You can tell God that my cup is too full right now. But I want to remind you what Psalm 23 says. Psalm 23 doesn't say, and God will top off your cup so that you're going to be good. He says, I'm going to make your cup overflow. He says, I'm going to make your cup overflow. I'm going to anoint you in the presence of your enemies. Which means all the stuff that's going on, your enemies, the ones that are trying to kill you and come at you, the cup that you think you have to keep full, none of that matters. You are going to be in the weeds, and that's where you find God as you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, says Psalm 23. You can tell Him how the storm is too rough and how you're afraid. But He didn't say stay put in the middle of the storm. He said, come. Come out of the boat. Step out of the boat. Fill the blue sheets. Put them in the offering plate as an offering to God. Sow the seeds. And dance in the middle of the storm on the water. These are your callings from God. Not by me, not your church, not the people around you. God is saying, look, this is how we do. Go. Do.